17. Mary Hunt. 45-year-old Scott Mitchell and 29-year-old Mary Hunt were on the heels of a rough breakup in 2016 when they became entangled in a very public battle over who was more guilty of wrongdoing the other throughout their relationship. Scott sued Mary in civil court for allegedly stealing $2.1 million worth of jewelry from his home in Palm Harbor, Florida. And she was also facing a criminal charge of grand theft. According to investigators, Scott said that he and other investors bought the pieces from struggling jewelers during the 2008 recession for around $900,000. Mary denied stealing the jewelry, while Scott turned over surveillance footage that he believed would implicate her in the crime. Video obtained from a UPS store reportedly showed Mary and her mother trying to insure a package for $50,000, while a recorded phone call mentioned a delivery of gold, diamonds, and silver at Mary's parents' house in Virginia. Meanwhile, Mary showed evidence of injuries that she claimed were inflicted by Scott, who denied ever striking the woman. He was once again able to back up his claims with security footage, including a clip which showed Mary striking herself in the face shortly before she accused Scott of doing so. The video contained no evidence of Scott ever abusing Mary, but she remained adamant that her claims were true. She even came forward with video evidence of her own, including footage of Scott screaming at her and ripping up her clothes. Federal authorities declined to get involved in the mess, and state authorities eventually dropped the grand theft charge against Mary. But the outcome of the civil case is unclear. 16. Alexandria Vera. In one of the most disturbing stories about a wayward educator making news headlines in recent years, a Texas middle school teacher in her 20s got caught having an inappropriate relationship with a student. The illicit connection reportedly began on Instagram, where the two exchanged messages and soon evolved past the point that any teacher-student relationship should. After being busted by the authorities, Vera admitted to the illegal intimacy, which she claimed went on with the blessing of the young man's parents. Their meetings were a daily occurrence for around 9 months, and Vera claimed that they were in love. To prevent people from becoming suspicious, she told her neighbors that the teen was her younger brother, and in the meantime, she groomed the adolescent and helped his family out financially to remain in their good graces. Law enforcement began investigating in 2016 after receiving a tip that Vera had become pregnant. An expert testified that Vera had a big heart and just wanted to be loved. But the excuse didn't fly in court. She originally faced charges that could carry a maximum life sentence, but took a deal and pleaded guilty to an aggravated assault charge. In the end, the judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison, with the requirement that she serve at least half her sentence behind bars. 15. Jubilee Sharp. In early 2020, reality TV star and U.S. Army veteran Jubilee Sharp was arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated after crashing her car in Palm City, Florida, during the early morning hours. But the 29-year-old Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise alum allegedly refused all forms of testing to determine her blood alcohol content. She struck a plea deal in 2021, enabling her to avoid a DUI conviction in exchange for pleading guilty to 1 count each of willfully refusing to sign and accept a summons or citation, and reckless driving causing injury to property or person. As a result, the judge sentenced Sharp to 1 year of probation and 75 hours of community service. She was also ordered to pay fines and complete a DUI education course. 14. Lori Fan. An aspiring model and nursing student named Lori Fan drew attention for reasons other than her good looks in 2017 when she was arrested in connection with the shooting death of 27-year-old Noelle Williams. The 22-year-old suspect was accused of conspiring with 28-year-old Jasper Atienza to kill the victim, who was shot 3 times outside his family's home in Markham, Ontario. According to prosecutors, Fan and Atienza lured Williams into an SUV with a promise to return his stolen cell phone. The trio were allegedly involved in the drug trade and Williams had robbed Atienza about a month earlier. During the brief interaction, the shooter opened fire on the unsuspecting target, killing him at the scene. Fan denied any involvement in the crime, while Atienza pointed the finger at the vehicle's passengers, claiming that he had no knowledge ahead of time that there was going to be a shooting. In the end, though, police arrested both Atienza and Fan on suspicion of first-degree murder. While in jail awaiting trial, Fan gave birth to a son. It was a heartbreaking reality, leaving the young woman unsure if she would be given an opportunity to raise the child as the case languished with an uncertain future. The trial finally took place in 2019 and ended with a guilty verdict for Atienza, while Fan was acquitted and released. She was reunited with her child and has remained largely absent from news headlines ever since, indicating that she's most likely staying on the straight and narrow. 13. Simone Pharaoh. In 2009, agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration raided the Los Angeles apartment of former bikini model and Penthouse poster girl, Simone Pharaoh, who was accused of running an international drug smuggling operation. The seductive blonde, who became famous under the name Simone Star, allegedly shipped and smuggled methamphetamine from California to Australia over a 7-month period via FedEx and the U.S. Postal Service, disguising the drugs as bath products. According to authorities, Pharaoh tasked her music and modeling staff members with helping her run the illicit business, while hiding behind at least 19 aliases, and using her celebrity status as a cover-up for the group's crimes. Prosecutors described her as the mastermind of the alleged criminal enterprise, which they claimed consisted of at least 7 participants. They also accused her of using the ill-gotten proceeds to fund a luxurious lifestyle. Following her arrest, Pharaoh accused her employees of running the network using her bank accounts, cell phones, and email address without her knowledge. A friend was kind enough to post Pharaoh's $150,000 bond, which she proceeded to skip out on and fled the country. Police finally apprehended her more than 2 years later in March of 2012, when they found her hiding out at a cheap hotel on Australia's Gold Coast. Pharaoh claimed that she wasn't jumping bail out of a disrespect for the law, but because she dated several underworld figures who she feared might kill her after learning of her arrest. Another 4 years went by before Pharaoh's case finally went to trial in 2016. And during the proceedings, she cried on the stand while describing the bottomless vortex of drug addiction that had taken over her life prior to her arrest. She couldn't function without using, and she also struggled with her mental health. Pharaoh pleaded guilty in an Australian court to 1 count of importing a marketable quantity of a border-controlled drug. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison, but was released in 2019 after serving 7 years. Following her release, the 43-year-old said it was her priority to help prevent young women from going down a similar and potentially life-ruining path of self-destruction. 12. Melissa Seals. In April of 2023, a 21-year-old Florida woman and aspiring Instagram model named Melissa Seals tried to flirt her way out of a 3:00 a.m. traffic stop in Tampa. The incident began when she was pulled over for running a red light while shirtless, with what appeared to be marijuana flakes all over herself. She tried to turn on the charm and acted giggly, perhaps thinking it would spare her from an arrest, but the officer was unreceptive to her attempted charm. Seals failed a field sobriety test, and during a search of her car, the cop found marijuana and a pipe. The young woman allegedly refused to take a breathalyzer while boasting about her family's wealth during the ride to jail. Her many moods of the morning were captured on police camera footage while the arresting officer remained impressively calm, allowing Seals' words to go in one ear and out the other. Seals posted bail a few hours later and was released. In an Instagram post a few months after her arrest, she shared a collection of selfies accompanied by the caption, "Law-abiding citizen," in an apparent taunt toward law enforcement. Unfortunately, though, the outcome of the case is unclear. 11. Raquel married Dolores Antiola and Melissa Dufour. During what began as a routine traffic stop along an interstate near Mobile, Alabama in June of 2023, a pair of sultry social media influencers were arrested for allegedly having $3 million worth of cocaine in their Ford Expedition. Police identified the women as Los Angeles-based singer and rapper Raquel Mary Dolores Antiola, who goes by the stage name Rocky, and fitness entrepreneur Melissa Dufour, who peddles her own clothing line called Sexy Sweats. According to court documents, Antiola and Dufour told police that they met up in Miami, then drove to Houston where they got very drunk at a house party. They proceeded on to Atlanta, then ended up in Mobile, where law enforcement reportedly found 216 pounds, or 98 kilograms of cocaine, packaged in bricks and stuffed into hidden compartments. Records also allege that the SUV was modified specifically to make room for the illicit goods. Just days earlier, both women had posted photos on Instagram that appeared to show them living their best lives. But now, they're each facing a potential federal prison sentence of 10 years to life if convicted as charged. 10. Sutra Tanit. After being arrested on suspicion of identity theft in Los Angeles in 2018, 24-year-old Thai-American former model Sutra Tanit went on the run and skipped her trial. Described by police as a prolific identity thief, she went into hiding with her boyfriend, Robert Carrasquillo, who was also wanted on a warrant for failing to appear in court on a felony charge. Authorities came close to catching Sutra during a high-speed chase in July of 2019, but she managed to get away after fleeing the high-end sports car on foot. Carrasquillo was arrested while Sutra remained at large for the next month. She was nabbed, though, in late August outside her residence, where investigators had been conducting surveillance and waiting for their opportunity to take her into custody. During a search of the young woman's residence, police reportedly found a credit card mill, identity theft equipment, and $5,000 in cash. Sutra was apprehended on outstanding felony warrants and was additionally charged with identity theft-related crimes. And while the outcome of the case is unclear, records show that nobody by her name is currently incarcerated in the state prison system. 9. Kimberly Miners. Former glamour model and garbage collector Kimberly Miners was going through a lot in her personal life when she began sharing videos of the human suffering in the Syrian war that emotionally impacted her. The young woman's fiancé had just left her, and a medical complication caused her pregnancy to terminate. Kimberly's posts about the Syrian war inadvertently made her a target for British-born Islamic State militant Naweed Hussein, who contacted the young woman directly and began chatting her up on a daily basis. Hussein sent Kimberly photos and videos that she didn't realize were propaganda, and she became one of the numerous women who were being groomed by her new friend into adopting an extremist ideology. At Hussein's urging, Miners changed her name and began developing friendships with women living under the thumb of ISIS in Syria. Authorities intervened shortly after Hussein began encouraging Miners to come to the country. He promised to marry Kimberly, preying on her need to feel less alone at an extremely difficult time in her life, making it difficult for her to follow police orders to stop interacting with her new associates. Kimberly was required to take a course to correct her online behavior, but she stopped showing up for the classes and was arrested in October of 2016. Authorities believed Hussein planned to turn her into the ISIS poster child for the radicalized Westerner. The young woman denied having terrorist ties, but the evidence on her computer pointed toward the likelihood that she was being groomed into a jihadi bride. But Hussein was killed in a drone strike just weeks after Kimberly's arrest. With help from the authorities, who stepped in at just the right time, she deprogrammed from the concerning mindset that had been impressed upon her during a vulnerable period in her life. In 2018, Kimberly shared her story on the popular UK talk show The Morning in hopes of reaching other girls who might be lost, fragile, and looking for a sense of belonging. She admitted that she didn't realize she was being baited until after her arrest, and said she felt like a person her age shouldn't have fallen for the manipulation. In hindsight, she said that it was scary to think about what could have happened if she had continued along that path. As Kimberly came forward to share details about her close call with becoming an ISIS bride, another young British woman, Safa Boular, was convicted of plotting a terrorist attack in the UK. Like Kimberly, Safa was once an aspiring model who caught the attention of ISIS militants on social media. And in addition to becoming radicalized herself, she got her mother and sister on board with her plot to carry out a knife attack in public. Police arrested the women the day before the planned attack, narrowly avoiding what would have likely been a mass tragedy. In court, Safa claimed that she'd been de-radicalized, but the prosecution warned that she posed an ongoing threat to public safety. She was convicted of plotting a terror attack and sentenced to life with a minimum of 13 years. 8. Bria Dominguez Garcia. During the early morning hours one day in July of 2017, a night manager at a hotel in Clearwater, Florida, called 911 for help kicking out a trespasser. The employee had told 25-year-old Bria Dominguez Garcia to leave the hotel because she was creating a disturbance and accused the young woman of pretending like she was going to leave and then sneaking into a guest's room. According to a police report, officers arrived to find the young woman naked. One of the cops handed Dominguez Garcia a towel to cover herself with, and she allegedly whipped him in the face with it. She was also accused of kicking 3 officers during her arrest and attempting to bite and spit on the cops as they took her into custody. The officer who wrote the report noted that the suspect appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. Dominguez Garcia was charged with trespassing, resisting an officer with violence, and battery on a law enforcement officer. She bailed out of jail for $10,250 and was potentially facing serious consequences. But her sultry mugshot also attracted thousands of new social media followers, helping to boost her success as an Instagram model. While the outcome of her criminal case is unclear, she remains active on social media with a fan base of 682,000 and counting. 7. Kyrie Lyles. The incident that landed 24-year-old Kyrie Lyles behind bars in November 2023 began with a call to 911 to report her dog missing in Sacramento County, California. When the sheriff's office called her back, the young woman said that she'd found her dog in someone's backyard and ended the conversation. A short while later, a Rancho Cordova resident called 911 and reported that someone was trying to break into their house with a butcher knife. The dispatcher called Kyrie again, and she allegedly said that she was at home with her dog and denied brandishing a knife. Deputies were dispatched to the residence, where the alleged victim told them that the suspect had accused them of stealing her dog and tried to enter their home. The neighbors said Kyrie then climbed over their fence and into their backyard, where she proceeded to bang on the door. Doorbell camera footage shared by the complainant appeared to show Kyrie carrying a weapon that resembled a knife. Body cam video that was made public after her arrest showed the suspect refusing to talk to a deputy who was trying to ask her what had happened. Kyrie said that she did nothing wrong and ignored the deputy's commands to exit her Dodge Challenger, which was parked in her driveway. But as the deputy tried removing her from the vehicle, she threw it in reverse and stepped on the gas. She turned the car around and drove through the yard, allegedly speeding toward an officer as she fled the scene. 2 deputies opened fire on the car, with one of the 10 bullets they shot striking Kyrie in the arm. The pursuit lasted for 15 more minutes before she surrendered, and luckily the deputies and the woman's dog were unharmed. Kyrie was charged with assaulting an officer. She remains behind bars at the Sacramento County Jail on $500,000 bail, while awaiting her next scheduled court date in January of 2024. 6. Marshala Perkins. In February 2018, a 19-year-old Texas A&M University student named Marshala Perkins was caught with 2 grams of marijuana outside her dorm building. The self-taught makeup artist had just finished broadcasting a tutorial on social media from her dorm room and was waiting outside in her car to meet with some friends when police approached her vehicle. In her first ever arrest, Marshala was charged with marijuana possession. She was released after spending a night in jail and ended up serving 6 months of probation. Her mugshot appeared on a social media page dedicated to Prison Bays and quickly went viral, with many commenters complimenting her glittery pink eyeshadow. The young woman wasn't exactly thrilled when she first learned about her sudden popularity. After all, most people aren't exactly proud to have their mugshot shown to the world. Marshala lost her job as a result of her highly publicized arrest. And in addition to the loss of her income, her mother was sick at the time, and she was hit with $2,000 in court fees, forcing her to take some time off from school to focus on her finances and family. However, she began to realize that her newfound internet fame was an opportunity to boost her following as a makeup influencer. So she took advantage of it. 6 months after her arrest, Marshala told BuzzFeed's As Is channel that she had landed a full-time job as a security guard, but that the marijuana conviction on her record had made it difficult for her to find work. The incident drew attention to the state's high number of marijuana arrests and the fact that black people are more than twice as likely as white people to be arrested for marijuana, despite cannabis use being equal among both demographics. 5. Kelly K. Green. During the 2020 Super Bowl in Miami, a scantily clad 27-year-old Instagram model named Kelly K. Green ran onto the field and was promptly arrested on a misdemeanor trespassing charge. She later told the New York Times that she was compelled to commit the act by her desire for fame, which she saw as a potential opportunity to make the money she needed to continue living in Los Angeles and to avoid returning to small-town Tennessee. From a self-marketing standpoint, Kelly wasn't wrong to think that she could attract the attention she wanted by doing something outrageous and having it go viral online. She was willing to do whatever it took, even at the risk of a criminal record or a ban from future NFL games. During her New York Times interview, she admitted that she put a lot of effort into her appearance that day so she would look good on camera. Kelly also trained with a physical therapist so she could safely nail the landing that was required when she jumped over a fence to access the field. She even had her outfit custom-made with Velcro closures so it would be easy to remove as she ran. The young woman's arrest happened so fast that she worried it might not have been noticeable enough to make her an overnight internet celebrity. She was also upset when the officer who took her mugshot didn't allow her to smile, which would have made the story all the more sensational. But by the time Kelly left the Miami-Dade County Jail the next morning, her goal had been achieved. A Daily Mail reporter was outside waiting when she was released and captured a photo of her exiting the facility with her pink underwear in hand. Now that people were paying attention, the blonde bombshell made sure to document her every move as she went out partying until 5 a.m. following her release. She also changed her profile picture to her mugshot to ensure that anyone who was looking for her had an easy time finding and following her. Kelly ultimately managed to avoid a criminal conviction. In the meantime, her fan base skyrocketed into the 7-figure range, bringing both financial opportunities and invitations to exclusive events. She became a millionaire and got to enjoy all the aspects of the LA party life that she had always wanted to experience. But the transactional nature of Kelly's new lifestyle eventually took its toll on her mental well-being, and she realized that the glitz and glamour of mingling with important people wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So she moved back to Tennessee and continued to enjoy the material success that she was able to obtain after making the world aware of her existence. 4. Kelsey Turner. When a 71-year-old psychiatrist named Dr. Thomas Burchard took a last-minute trip to Las Vegas and failed to return home in 2019, his fiancée Judy Earp suspected that he'd been met with foul play. She'd recently started to notice possible signs of dementia in his behavior, and she'd become increasingly worried that it would mix dangerously with his naturally generous personality. Judy was particularly worried that Burchard was being taken advantage of by his sugar baby, Kelsey Turner, a 25-year-old former Playboy model who benefited immensely from the senior citizen's generosity. The two met face-to-face after connecting online, and Burchard became enamored with Kelsey, almost to the point of obsession. Burchard paid the rent on Kelsey's home, where she lived with her boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, and a roommate named Diana Pena. He also paid for the young woman's car and other trappings of her lavish lifestyle, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on her over a 2-year period. By the time Burchard made that last fateful trip to Las Vegas, he'd tried cutting Kelsey off financially and ending their involvement with each other. He told Judy that he had traveled to Sin City to witness Kelsey's dishonest and deceptive behavior firsthand. But it's also hard not to wonder if he was incapable of resisting the temptation to continue their volatile relationship. Shortly after Burchard was reported missing, Kelly's car was found abandoned in the desert with his body in the trunk. He'd been bludgeoned to death, and the investigation quickly led police to Kelsey, John Kennison, and Diana Pena as their prime suspects. The trio fled Las Vegas shortly after the murder, but Pena had second thoughts about running and decided to turn herself in. Her willingness to cooperate landed her a plea deal that spared her from prison time and sentenced her to 3 years of probation for being an accessory to murder. Pena revealed that Kelsey got angry at Burchard over some text messages she found in his home, including messages with her mother about possibly trying to have her children taken away from her. The argument escalated to the point where Burchard retreated to a room and locked the door. According to Pena, Kennison broke down the door and battered Burchard with a baseball bat. At one point, Pena encouraged her twisted friends to take the elderly man to a hospital. But they put him in the car and told Pena to clean up the bloody mess upstairs, at which point the murderous couple moved Burchard into the garage, where Kennison bludgeoned him to death with a gun. Kennison pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 18 to 45 years in prison. Kelsey took an Alford plea for the same charge, which means that she maintained her innocence while admitting that the prosecution had a strong enough case to secure a conviction. And as a result, she was sentenced to 10 to 25 years in prison. 3. Nyla Murel French. In December of 2021, an incarcerated 22-year-old woman named Nyla Murel French became the latest viral prison bae. She was first noticed when a photo of her in jail sweats was shared to her Facebook page. Admirers fawned over Nyla, but some of her fans had a change of heart after learning about the crime she committed. In April of 2019, she was sentenced to 7 years on a first-degree assault conviction for stabbing a teen girl in the neck outside a gas station in St. Paul. According to court documents, Nyla and a friend observed the victim approaching the store from inside a car in June of 2018. They attacked the victim, who said that Nyla had been mean-mugging her just days earlier at a high school graduation ceremony. The injured woman told police that Nyla Murel French and another woman followed her and her sister around while threatening to beat up her sister. During the gas station attack, the victim lost a lot of blood and felt her left side go numb. She reportedly suffered permanent nerve damage after sustaining a collapsed lung and injuries to her jugular vein. According to a criminal complaint, Nyla tried hiding the knife on a candy shelf, but she changed her mind and retrieved it before leaving the store. In the time between Nyla's arrest for the assault and her sentencing, she caught 9 theft charges. She tearfully apologized during the hearing. But in the wake of becoming popular online, she thanked her new fans on Facebook, writing, "Thanks for the support." 2. Elena Seminkina. Russian-Canadian former beauty queen Elena Seminkina began dating professional baseball player turned doctor Drew Taylor in 2010, shortly after being crowned Miss Universe Canada. The relationship lasted for about a year, but reportedly went sour due at least partially to Seminkina's demands that Taylor help her achieve fame. Sources familiar with the situation told the Toronto Sun that the blonde bombshell commanded her boyfriend to make her a movie star. She also allegedly threatened to make false accusations against him if he didn't include her in Toronto International Film Festival events. In January 2015, after Taylor ended the relationship, he accused Seminkina of threatening to kill him. He told his ex-girlfriend to stop contacting him, but he later claimed that she ignored his wishes. When Taylor began dating his current wife, Jennifer, later that year, Seminkina allegedly escalated her harassment and targeted them both. On one occasion, the couple accused Seminkina of confronting and threatening them at a party. In 2019 and 2020, more than 4 years after the unwanted contact began, Seminkina was accused of harassing and slandering Taylor on social media in an attempt to undermine his career in the medical field. The victims accused her of ignoring a cease and desist letter, and she was charged with 2 counts of harassment. Seminkina was released without bail, but the court imposed strict rules, including no contact with Taylor or Jennifer. Oddly enough, the case has been conspicuously absent from news headlines ever since, indicating that it was either squared away quietly or is ongoing. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Mae Anderson. Back in April 2006, long before in-flight tantrums were a common, everyday occurrence, 23-year-old Danish supermodel Mae Anderson was accused of making a scene during a flight from Amsterdam to Miami. While the source of the former Sports Illustrated cover girl's anger is unclear, reports state that she became unruly and struck a flight attendant during her outburst. The plane reached its destination, but Anderson allegedly continued being loud and violent when officers came to escort her off the aircraft. She was charged with simple battery, resisting arrest without violence, and disorderly intoxication. Then, after undergoing a drug and alcohol examination and being booked into custody, she was handed over to immigration authorities, who denied her entry into the United States. A Customs and Border Protection spokesperson said that Anderson was inadmissible to the country under a visa waiver program that allows visitors from certain countries to enter the U.S. without a visa. The representative didn't specify the reasons why Anderson was turned away, but it's probably fair to assume that her arrest had something to do with it. She was then put on the next plane back to the Netherlands with an available seat. Anderson's attorney, Robert Rosenblatt, told CBS News that his client had a different account of what happened than the version of events offered by airport staff. But he acknowledged that things are different since 9/11, implying that heightened flight security measures were a factor in his client's arrest. If convicted as charged, Anderson could have faced up to 2 years in prison and potential harm to her immigration status. Luckily, though, she avoided both possibilities and was ordered to undergo a 4 to 5 hour anger management course with the promise that the charges would be dropped once she fulfilled the requirement.
Number 8. Hen Bustami. 28-year-old Hen Bustami first made headlines in 2022 for accusing Las Vegas police of arresting her for being too good-looking. Officers said that she tried to dine and dash at a Chili's restaurant and accused her of being drunk and belligerent. But Bustami allegedly claimed that they targeted her because they had never seen anyone as pretty as she is. According to a police report, the young woman called the officers perverts and threatened to spit on them. Bustami's cringeworthy behavior became downright incriminating 2 months later when a woman called 911 stating that her mother was dead. It was at least the 8th time that year officers had reported to the family's home. Neighbors said they saw the young woman talking to herself on different occasions and that she frequently let herself into people's garages. For whatever reason, Bustami was also seen scattering her things on the ground outside. When she called to report her mother's death, she told the dispatcher, "I think I killed my mommy." When she was pressed for more information, Bustami said that she broke a table over her mother's head and cut her neck off. First responders found 61-year-old Afaf Hussanin unresponsive with multiple lacerations. By then, Bustami had fled the scene. Officers pulled her over in California and reportedly found her behind the wheel covered in blood. They said that she admitted once again to killing her mother, this time claiming that she cut the victim with shards of glass during an argument. Bustami was extradited to Las Vegas and she's now facing an open murder charge. Number 7. Isabella Guzman. In 2020, 7-year-old footage from the trial of accused murder suspect Isabella Guzman went viral on TikTok. Guzman stabbed her mother in the face dozens of times, but it was her bizarre courtroom behavior that drew attention to her. Footage showed the young woman making strange facial expressions and showing no outward remorse for her crime. She can also be seen smirking and smiling at the camera. Hours before the murder, Guzman's mother, Yoon Min Hoi, called the police due to her daughter's concerning demeanor. The relationship was strained, but it apparently reached a breaking point as later that day, Yoon Mi was found dead. The troubled teen's father, Robert Guzman, told the press that he tried to calm his daughter down by giving her advice, but it clearly didn't work. Isabella was apprehended the next day. She had to be dragged out of her cell to attend her court hearing and claimed that voices told her to kill her mother. In a rare outcome for a murder charge, the judge accepted her insanity plea after a psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with paranoid schizophrenia. It was concluded that she'd suffered from the disorder for years without receiving the proper medication. She was ordered to undergo treatment at an institution until her mental health was restored, a sentence that doesn't come with a defined time period and could take anywhere from days to years. Guzman petitioned for release in 2020, claiming that her condition had improved with medication and that she wasn't herself when she murdered Yoon Mi. She told CBS 4 that she endured years of abuse from her family and that it worsened when she quit being a Jehovah's Witness. Unfortunately, it's unclear whether her request to rejoin society was granted. Number 6. Wana Barbara. During the late 1990s, professional wrestler Wana Barbara began murdering elderly women throughout Mexico City. Motivated by the need for money and a lingering resentment toward her own mother dating back to childhood, she targeted victims over the age of 60 who lived alone. She gained access to their homes by pretending to be a social worker, a nurse, or a cleaner in search of work, and on multiple occasions, she offered to help them with their groceries. Barbara then bludgeoned and strangled each victim to death and robbed their home, earning her the nickname Mata Viejitas, or the Little Old Lady Killer. Citizens began to suspect that a serial killer was at work, but police initially dismissed the idea. The murders continued into the 2000s, and when authorities finally launched an investigation, they announced that the suspect appeared to be a man who wore women's clothing. At least one journalist speculated that this was more of a witch hunt against the city's transsexual prostitutes than an authentic murder investigation. Police finally identified Barbara as a suspect after an eyewitness saw her leaving the home of her latest victim in 2006. They connected her with at least 10 murders through fingerprints, but she was convicted of 16 murders in total, although it's believed that she killed at least 42 people. 30 unsolved cases were closed after Barbara was arrested, so it's impossible to know exactly how many lives she took. She was sentenced to 759 years in prison, despite Mexico's maximum sentence of 60 years. Number 5. SchulzYez. In 2004, single father of 4 Kenneth Yidez eloped with a woman named Cindy Schultz and moved her into his beautiful farmhouse in Wausau, Wisconsin. 2 years later, Cindy found Kenneth dead in a pool of his own blood on their bed. Next to him on Cindy's side of the mattress was a piece of paper with the B word written on it, stuck to her pillow with a knife. Cindy claimed she slept in the couple's camper the night before to escape noise in the household. She said she was heavily medicated and didn't hear their dog barking. She also said she was oblivious to the 2 gunshots that killed Kenneth, as well as any other noises that would indicate something was wrong. The case quickly became a whodunit, and the investigation lasted several years. In the meantime, Cindy moved on suspiciously fast. Within days of her husband's death, she stopped taking calls from his family and took all the photos of his children off the living room wall. She also went against his Catholic mother's wishes and had Kenneth's body cremated. It was also odd that Kenneth had supposedly written his children out of his will before he died. For some reason, he made Cindy his sole beneficiary in addition to the hefty life insurance payout she stood to receive from his death. Fingers pointed wildly in all directions for 15 years. Cindy accused Kenneth's teenagers of possibly co-conspiring to kill their dad, and she sent law enforcement various other tips that did nothing to help solve the case. Detectives were also suspicious of Kenneth's former business partner, the troubled teens that the couple took in as foster children, and some local drunks. However, most of the suspects were ultimately cleared, and authorities kept circling back to Cindy. In 2021, they decided to try the case based on circumstantial evidence due to concerns about aging witnesses they needed testimony from. A jury ultimately convicted Cindy, who was now 66 years old, of first-degree murder. She's currently serving a life sentence and continues to maintain her innocence from behind bars. Number 4. Shaina Hubers. In 2011, a successful young attorney from Kentucky named Ryan Poston began dating a glamorous 19-year-old woman named Shaina Hubers. The young woman's overwhelming behavior soon became a major source of stress for Poston, who told his friends and colleagues that Shaina was controlling and jealous. She clearly took the relationship a lot more seriously than he did and wasn't looking for the heavy commitment she seemed to demand. Poston distanced himself from Shaina, but she continued to contact him obsessively and showed up at his condo unannounced several times despite living 90 miles away. His friends would later say that Poston didn't put his foot down hard enough when he tried to end things with the woman because he didn't want to hurt Shaina's feelings. After snooping into his messages and finding out that he had an upcoming date with the winner of the Miss Ohio beauty pageant, Shaina drove to Poston's apartment and shot him 6 times, ending his life at just 29 years old. She claimed the shooting was in self-defense, but the physical evidence suggested Poston was in a defenseless position when it happened. Unaware that a surveillance camera was rolling in the interrogation room, she made incriminating comments to herself when she was alone. She also requested an attorney, but wouldn't stop talking to anyone who would listen, and her story about what happened changed several times. At one point, Shaina said that she continued shooting Poston because she didn't want him to survive with a deformed face because he was vain, adding that she gave him the nose job he always wanted. As a result of her actions, Shaina's currently serving life in prison and will become eligible for parole in 2032. Number 3. Lulu Sosa. Divorced single dad Ramon Sosa met Maria de Lourdes Dorantes, better known as Lulu, in 2007. They got married and opened a profitable gym together in Houston, but their relationship noticeably changed after Lulu gained her U.S. citizenship, as she was originally from Mexico. Her tone was no longer warm or loving, according to Ramon, and she frequently reminded him that she was now an American and was entitled to the same benefits as him. Ramon didn't understand exactly what his wife meant, and he began to notice that the couple's money was mysteriously disappearing. But he fought to make the marriage work as Lulu became increasingly cold and distant. They ultimately separated in 2015 and began the process to get a divorce. Even though Lulu accused Ramon of horrifying allegations of abuse, the pair continued to live in the same house together. While training at the couple's gym one day, a boxer named Mundo overheard Lulu talking about wanting Ramon dead and offered to connect her with a hitman. In reality, he was terrified for Ramon's safety and went straight to the police with the information. Mundo continued to play along, telling Lulu that he found someone willing to do the job for $3,000. In the meantime, Ramon carried on with life as usual in their household, despite knowing he was living with someone who wanted him gone. With the help of law enforcement, he posed for photos that made it seem as though the hitman had done his job. An undercover agent pretended to be the assassin and showed the pictures they'd taken to Lulu. When she saw the photo of Ramon lying in a shallow pit with what looked like a bullet wound to the head, she smiled. Lulu pleaded guilty to solicitation of murder in 2015 and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Ramon forgave her but moved on with his life and found true love with a new partner. Number 2. Betty Broadrick. Stay-at-home mother of 4 Betty Broadrick began to suspect her millionaire husband, prominent San Diego attorney Dan Broadrick, of cheating on her during the 1980s. He eventually moved out and took custody of their children. It took 4 years for the former couple to settle their contentious divorce case. In the meantime, Dan moved in with his secretary, Linda Kolkina, who Betty had suspected him of cheating on her with. Betty contacted Dan obsessively, ignoring numerous restraining orders and leaving vile messages on his answering machine. She also trespassed onto his property and drove her car into his front door, knowing their kids were inside the house at the time. When Dan and Linda married in 1989, they were so concerned about Betty showing up at the wedding that Linda urged Dan to wear a bulletproof vest. Luckily, she stayed away. However, just 7 months later, Betty stole a key to Dan's home from their daughter and removed a phone and answering machine from the bedroom when he wasn't there. She then returned in the middle of the night and shot Dan and Linda dead while they slept in their bed. Betty turned herself into the police and never denied killing the couple, but she claimed that it wasn't premeditated and that she suffered from battered wife syndrome. Her first trial ended in a hung jury, but she was found guilty during her second trial and received 2 life sentences as a result. She's been denied parole twice and will be eligible again in 2032 when she's 84 years old. Over the years, Betty has blatantly admitted to feeling no remorse for the double murder, and even her kids are divided on whether they think she deserves freedom. Number 1. ChaseyPointer. In 2016, police were called to a dirt road in Royce City, Texas, where they found 47-year-old firefighter Robert Pointer dead from a gunshot wound. His body was found sitting in the back seat of his estranged wife, Chasey's Jeep. The woman was hyperventilating and could barely speak when they arrived. It almost seemed theatrical, like bad acting, and the responding officers became suspicious of her. Chasey also overshared about her personal life and kept pausing, as if she were thinking a little too hard about questions that should have been easy to answer. Chasey said she called Robert for help when her Jeep got stuck in the mud, and that she went down the rarely traveled dirt road after missing a turn. She then claimed that out of nowhere, a gunman emerged from the wilderness and shot Robert. Investigators found it hard to believe that someone was lying in wait along the remote road for their chance to fatally shoot a random stranger. They discovered that Robert was planning to divorce Chasey and petition for full custody of their child, and that his wife had been cheating on him with several different men. Detectives began poking holes in her story by disproving her claim that one of her boyfriends, Michael Garza, was working out of state when Robert was shot. Police also discovered that Chasey had 2 possible motives for the crime: custody of her and Robert's daughter, and collecting on his $685,000 life insurance policy. Garza was convicted of Robert's murder and received a 99-year prison sentence as a result. Chasey was also found guilty of murder for her role in the crime and was sentenced to life. The disgraced former housewife maintained her innocence in a 48 Hours interview, arguing that being a cheater doesn't make her a killer and that she's devastated about her husband's passing. It's a far cry from the tales of horrific abuse she told her boyfriends in her attempts to persuade them to kill the man.
Would you rather look stunning in your mugshot for a humiliating or shameful crime, or look embarrassingly bad in your mugshot for a mundane and forgivable offense? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!